We get some assurance that you don't put up, you see, your own nominees, you see, but that we do get people who will express our voice in the parliament. That Mr. Gandhi had to accept, so he accepted that, you see. Of course, we had the benefit of it only in one election, in 1937, you see. There you will see that the Federation swept the poll. Gandhi was not able to get a single candidate of his party elected.
He worked entirely as a politician.
As a politician, he was never a Mahatma, and I refuse to call him Mahatma. You see, I've never in my life called him Mahatma. He doesn't deserve that title, not even from the point of view of his morality. You see. Satisfied.
I'll start with Jai Bhim, because this salute is to the Ambedkarite movement what Lal Salam is to comrades, and Azadi is to Kashmiris, what Black Power is to civil rights. Black Power salute is to civil rights. Though we chose the date that was available to us at Habitat Center, to whom I'm thankful, I'm glad this book is being discussed on a day that happens to be Kanshiram's birthday. B.R. Ambedkar, we can all see him, looms on us like the sun. I have with us Asad Zaidi, who is going to be in conversation with Arundhati Roy. I would request both of them to come onto the stage. Asad is a dear friend who has been supportive of Navyana since I met him in 2003, made a trip to Delhi just to meet him when we had just started Navyana. He runs 3 Essays Press, which was started just a year before or two before Navyana came into existence. And he's a well-known Hindi poet. A sample of his book is left outside for you to see. It's not for sale, he told me. Even the sample is not there, but he's pretty famous. You can just Google him and find out about his poetry. Then there's Arundhati Roy, and we have traveled a long way, and our conversation began with me asking her. She figures in one of the first 4 Navyana books, Touchable Tales, where I'd asked her about the representation of Dalits by Dalits in autobiographies. It was a dialogue, and then that's when I asked her, have you read Ambedkar? She said, no. So that's where the conversation began. I sent her Annihilation of Caste, and it's been this 10-year conversation around this book that we have had that is reflected in her introduction. Thank you, Arundhati. There have been some intense conversations that have already been happening around the book for nearly 80 years. This evening we'll be merely continuing that conversation. Let me begin with what Ambedkar says at one point in Annihilation of Caste. Caste is no doubt primarily the breath of the Hindus, but the Hindus have fouled the air all over. I mean, including, I would imagine, this Habitat Center where we are caste-breathing people. In 1936, when the Hindu reformist group, the Jatpat Todak Mandal of Lahore, invited Dr. Bhimrao Ramji Ambedkar to deliver its annual lecture, it asked for and received the text of the speech in advance. It found the contents, in its own words, in Ambedkar's words, unbearable. Ambedkar had anticipated this, for he begins his undelivered speech with an injunction from the Manusmriti, Varnanam Brahmano Guru. Among the Varnas, the Brahman is the teacher, preceptor. An untouchable, however qualified, being asked to preside over a conference of caste Hindus in 1936 was, as Ambedkar himself points out, an act of great daring. For as Ambedkar says, I quote, I have questioned the authority of the Mahatma whom they revere, as he was doing so in the BBC interview in 1955. He continued to hold that position. They hate me. To them, I'm a snake in the garden. The Mandal will no doubt be asked by politically minded Hindus to explain why it called me to fill this place of honor. I shall not be surprised if political Hindus regard this as an insult. Today, politically minded Dalits, at least a section of them, have regarded this act of Navyana, run by a person born into the Brahmin Varna, annotating it, and getting a writer of the diligence and intelligence of Arundhati Roy to write an introduction, as a historical reversal of that insult. This is perhaps as it should be. Ambedkar's utterances in this undelivered speech are deeply disturbing, perhaps even more so for a Dalit. I quote, the Mandal knows best the reasons which led it to travel to Bombay to select a president, to fix upon a man so repugnant to the Hindus, and to descend so low in the scale as to select an Antyaja, and untouchable, to address an audience of the Savarnas. As for myself, you will allow me to say that I've accepted the invitation much against my will, and also against the will of many of my fellow untouchables. I know the Hindus are sick of me. He goes on to say he's a persona non grata for them. And he is happy to give his own views in his own platforms. This responsibility has been thrust upon him. If this is the painful story of the origin of a text that is among the most radical and important texts ever written in this subcontinent, then surely those who are today saying this gesture of a Brahmin annotating the text or a non-Dalit introducing it to take it to a wider audience are acts that need to be viewed with suspicion and sometimes even contempt. Would such an audience have turned up today, such an audience as you, had turned up today if this were a Dalit-run, Dalit-led enterprise? Would Caravan and Outlook give so much space for a Dalit to speak? There's no history of that. These are questions that we cannot duck. But then these are the very questions of representation and privilege, questions of structure and power, that the edition of the book we are discussing today is all about. Freedom of expression is not an absolute value. Some have more of it, some have none of it. It is just like the right to vote was for Ambedkar. He was talking about the double vote in the BBC interview. He wanted to augment the value of the Dalit by giving them a double vote. And you'll find that in this edition of Annihilation of Caste, especially in Arundhati Roy's introduction, it has one of the finest defenses of the double vote and critiques of Gandhi, something that Ambedkar was himself doing. Yes, there are hundreds of editions of Annihilation of Caste and they're freely available on the internet. Yet, the privileged castes have had the privilege to ignore this text. They've had the privilege to jettison any dialogue on Ambedkar's radical ideas carried forward by the Dalit movements of India for over 60 years. While a majority of the privileged castes are blissfully ignorant of its existence, Annihilation of Caste has been printed and reprinted like most of Ambedkar's large oeuvre by small, mostly Dalit-owned presses and read by mostly Dalit readers for over 7 decades. It now has the curious distinction of being one of the most obscure as well as one of the most widely read books in India. I mean, it would sell 100 times more than Chetan Bhagat, Arundhati Roy, everybody put together, I'm just telling you. But we don't know, it's in a separate space. Now, that's the comparison being made on the internet, I'm sorry. This in itself, this separation, this in itself illumines the iron grid of the caste system. Punitha Pandian, editor of Dalit Murase, a Tamil monthly, on seeing the Navyana edition of Annihilation of Caste, wrote to me saying, since 2007, Dalit Murase in Tamil has published 17,000 copies of Annihilation of Caste, 3 editions. He ended this letter saying, but there's not a single debate in Tamil Nadu so far. I'm glad you made a national debate in a single day, unquote. But someone asked on Facebook, पता नहीं बुक फेयर्स में ये लोग सब जो जाते हैं, जैसे हैबिटेट सेंटर में आज लोग हम इकट्ठे हुए हैं, कभी समयक प्रकाशन या गौतम बुक सेंटर, अभी मैं फॉरवर्ड प्रेस की भी बात करूंगा, यहाँ जाते हैं कि नहीं कभी? My question also, to add to this, would be, do we keep Ambedkar confined to Samayak, Gautam and Dalit Murase and thousands of such Dalit platforms? A related and important question to be asked is, what is it that we do with privilege? Sharpen it into a weapon and wield it against the very banyan tree of Brahmanism that entangles us with its roots in the air? Or should we just enjoy the shaded comfort of the tree? I believe it is the former that this edition of Annihilation of Caste attempts. Navyana has been an attempt to create a platform to engage with those who are smug about caste privilege so that they interrogate that privilege. Navyana is, in my view, a necessary historical mistake. It will pass, but for now, it will stay. This annotated edition of Annihilation of Caste comes in a series of books that Navyana has done over the last 10 years. Most of them are out there. By Bhagwan Das, Namdev Dasal, Sharmila Rege, Namdev Neemgade, N.D. Rajkumar, Kancha Ailaya, Meena Kandasamy, Premanand Gajvi, Siddhalingaya, Gail Omvet, Balagopal, Gogu Shamala, Durga Bhavyam, Anand Tiltumde, and many more. If Ambedkar is the writer I most admire among those dead, Arundhati Roy is one of the writers I most admire among the living. And in this edition of the book, I have managed to sandwich myself between both of them. That's my privilege and honor. While I can understand the anxiety and politics over who gets to introduce or annotate Ambedkar, I do strongly believe that Ambedkar belongs to us all. After all, annihilation of caste is something that those who have caste need to undertake. The caste Hindus, as Ambedkar called them, touchables, he called them. I mean, when I read touchables every time in Ambedkar, I think it's a slur. He uses it with anger. And I believe Ambedkar is like the sun. He's as universal as the sun. He illumines the lives of Dalits as much as he illumines the lives of non-Dalits, whether most Dalits like it or not, whether all Dalits like it or not. He's the sun that, as Namdev Dasal writes in his powerful ode to Ambedkar in 1972, which comes in Golpita, he's the sun that moves only from one freedom to the next. Annihilation of caste is Ambedkar's call for rebirth and regeneration in this life. His was a call to destroy something ugly in those who practice caste so that they may have a sense of genuine beauty of the humanity nesting in each person. Dasal again, everyone is, as a matter of fact, as complete as the sun. Speaking to a Dalit audience in 1942, Ambedkar said, "The battle to me is a matter of joy. The battle is in the fullest sense spiritual. There is nothing material or social in it. For ours is a battle not for wealth or for power. Ours is a battle for freedom. It is a battle for the reclamation of human personality." Unquote. You can apply this anywhere. To the struggles of Romas in Hungary, in Kashmir or Manipur, or the LGBT struggle against 377. Ambedkar genuinely wanted the privileged caste too to get in touch with their human personality, which is smothered by caste. Ambedkar was, and a section of Dalits today is, deeply skeptical of such a possibility. I respect that skepticism. It is for the Hindus to make a belated effort, or anybody who practices caste, to make a belated effort to prove them wrong. It is time to rid the air of the foulness of caste. Now I'll hand over I had to make a little statement because there has been a lot of questioning. I don't know those who are here familiar with social media debates. This is partly a response to that, and the book is its own solid defense. Arundhati Roy will speak first, and then there'll be a conversation, as I said, a 77-year-old conversation that is going to continue. And after that, there'll be, you can purchase the books outside, which are available at a discount for 400 rupees. And those who want to get it signed should subsequently queue up on one side, and Arundhati Roy will, I can't get Ambedkar to sign, I could just bring his voice here.